There we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members and guests. Welcome to this regular online meeting of the West Shore Photography Club. It is, of course, July the 22nd, 2024, and I'm your host and club president, Dennis Baker. So, I don't think our newest member is on board, but I'd like to welcome James Marsh from Carlisle to the club. He just joined this morning. Wanted to let you know that the club year is winding down. We go from September to August. So our next meeting will be the last one of this club year. We will meet on Monday, August the 12th. Okay, it'll be an image review, and Chip Kane's going to do the reviewing. There's a theme. So you want to start thinking about this and start looking or start shooting to the theme to have one ready to go. The theme is the effective use of negative space. Aha, something a little different. And as is our philosophy, we don't define the theme for you. We want you to use your imagination, think out of the box, do a little research on your own, whatever. But the upload date, the deadline for uploading your image will be the Wednesday, midnight, Wednesday, the prior to August the 12th, Wednesday night. That's been the way we've been doing things. So hopefully you'll think about, or you'll submit an image that meets the criteria for that, or seems to fit that theme. Let's see. Oh, our first meeting of the new club year will be on September the 9th. And we'll get information about this in the very near future. But I want to let you know we already have a speaker lined up. He's an accomplished photographer and painter and teacher and presenter from Connecticut, by the way. And I won't divulge his name at this point, but we'll give you a little more information, or give you a lot more information in the future. But and I'll put this out in the follow-up email tomorrow. There'll be, probably won't get this out until the evening. I have some stuff to do in the morning, but we'll have a link to the recording of this meeting. We'll have a PDF that our guest speaker is presenting or providing for you. And I'll have a list of the upcoming events. So at this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Joe, our vice president. Joe is going to talk about trips, past and upcoming, and introduce our accomplished and distinguished guest speaker this evening. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Dennis. So my job is to turn it over to Mark. And Mark, if you could give us an update from our trip on Saturday, that would be wonderful.
Okay. Well, this past Saturday, we went to Landis Valley Museum. There was 12 of us there. It's a great place. I had actually never been there before. The buildings were fun and everything. And there was also a Civil War reenactment camp going on at the same time. I said we had 12 people at it. Most people, there were several people there who after 2 hours when I was talking to them were like, we're going to stay longer. So everybody was enjoying it, and that's about it. I think everybody had a good time.
Mary said it was a little warm.
It was a little warm and humid, but it wasn't terrible. It wasn't like earlier in the week when it was close to 100.
Thanks, Mark. On August the 4th, on a Sunday, we're going to have a trip to Lebanon Valley College to the Suzanne Arnold Art Gallery, and Mike Donovan will be leading that. And this is artwork. There won't be any photography, but Mike is going to analyze the artwork that we see and put it into perspective to our photography so we can learn how to create better images by looking at the painted works that we see, and quite a few of them from the Hudson River Valley, and there'll be different images from before from Hudson River Valley. So that'll be on Sunday the 4th at noontime, and that's a beautiful ride over there. If you take 81, go north, and then come down into Annville, that road from 81 north down into Annville is really, really a pretty ride. So that'll be on the 4th. We have a workshop coming up in Boiling Springs in late August. So we'll have that and you'll get lots of information on it. And we have quite a few other trips planned throughout the summer yet, one every 2 weeks or so. And so we're going to keep ourselves very, very active on that. So
You want to
that's,
mention the follow-up to this meeting?
oh yes, the follow-up. Thank you. We're going to have a follow-up to a practice session. Karen's going to be teaching us today about some of the techniques to do street photography. And then very quickly, we don't want to forget it, on the 10th, we're going to be going over to the West Shore Farmers Market and we're going to be practicing it. It's on a Saturday. It'd be really busy, which is a good time to do practice street photography. And we're going to be doing that. And we have permission and we're going to have lanyards on with our West Shore Photography Club lanyards with our cards so that people will know who we are possibly and be a little bit more receptive to doing some of the street photography. Yes, Dennis.
Just a point of clarification. I did send an email out last week about that trip and I had the date listed as August the 3rd. That has changed. Yeah, it's going to be August the 10th. So I will publish several reminders between now and then. But Saturday, August the 10th, West Shore Farmers Market. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, on those on the reminders, Dennis, we have marked note the date change. Okay, just for that. So because we had to make that change. So that's, I mean, there's lots of others things coming up, but those are the hot buttons we have right now. And so I would like to introduce to you our speakers this evening, Karen Commings. Karen Commings is a longtime member of the West Shore Photography Club, and she has entertained and become truly an expert in street photography, and that is her passion. She has been published 9 times in Black and White magazine. She was in Street Sweeper magazine, and that's not the sweepers you're thinking of, but in Street Sweeper magazine, Harrisburg magazine, Photo Review, Street Photography magazine. She has been in all of those as a featured photographer. And in October 20th of 2023, in Street Photography magazine, she was the headliner for the whole issue. And she has her work in all over the country: Pennsylvania, New York City, Texas, Minnesota, Kansas, Maryland, and the list goes on and on and on from where she has her work. And she has her work because she is so good. So what we're going to do, and Karen has agreed to show us her images and talk about how she does street photography. So we're going to ask you to hold questions and put them into chat. And there probably will be some questions come out of this. And so then we'll feed those to Karen when there's like logical breaks. So Karen, we have made you co-host.
Okay.
You can now share your screen and your presentation.
Okay. And let's see here.
Perfect.
Okay. Is it covering the whole screen?
It's covering the whole screen. Now, remember, folks, we do have some of the people are visible. So if you want to see everything, you may need to minimize the listing of the participants. Okay, but you don't have to. Okay, Karen, you're on.
Okay, well, thanks for inviting me. And what I'd like to do is just tell you a little bit about how I became interested in street photography, and then pass along some of the tips and techniques I learned along the way. Way back in 2012, when I started to take my photography seriously, at the same time I was trying to learn how to use the camera, I was also studying the work of other photographers. And thanks to the Harrisburg Camera Club at that time, visiting a lot of exhibits by the masters or so-called masters of photography, I developed an appreciation for black and white photography and candid street photography. So that's basically how I got started. To help me along the way, I volunteered for some organizations like the American Heart Association, This was in 2013. I did a polo match. And I have to say that the photos that I turned over to the organizations were in color, but I subsequently converted them to black and white for my own benefit, because I just have a passion for black and white photography. Turning point for me was in 2014 when the club took a trip to Washington, D.C. to see the Gary Winogrand exhibit. And I had made up my mind beforehand that I was going to spend the afternoon at the mall taking street photography or street photos. So these were some of the ones I captured that afternoon in 2014. Then right after that, I made my first solo trip to New York City just to do street photography, which I love doing. I love New York and I love the people in New York, but there's so much opportunity to get candid shots. And then a little bit later in the year, I took a 3-day street photography workshop also in New York, taught by the In Public group. These photos were taken during the workshop. And then after that, I started traveling to New York like 2 or 3 times a year, just to do street photography. Okay, so where can you do street photography besides New York? Actually, anywhere where there are people. These photos were taken in Harrisburg, Holiday Parade and St. Patrick's Day Parade. Events, the upper left is Carlisle Harvest of the Arts, I think. Below that, I took that at the Gettysburg Ferry Festival. Drumming Along the River, which still occurs in Harrisburg, although it's not as an elaborate event as it used to be. And then the Birdman is from the Apple Festival in New Cumberland. Animal events, dog people are great and dogs are great. Cultural festivals, like Arts Fest, and there was an event in Harrisburg that used to be called Culture Fest. I don't know that it's continued. It seems like the pandemic kind of put the kibosh on so many things. These were taken at Arts Fest, which occurs in Harrisburg along the river Memorial Day weekend. Lancaster used to have First Friday events, which were always a lot of fun. I don't know if they're still doing that. Like I said, the pandemic has kind of put a stop to a lot of things. The photo on the right, I took actually inside a pub. So you can do street photography indoors. It doesn't have to be outdoors. My favorite thing to photograph is demonstrations. There aren't enough of them for my taste, but I have a feeling as we get closer to the election, there'll be a lot of them. And that's my guess anyway. I don't know why the Proud Boys were here. I don't remember what the demonstration was, but the other ones were from the Stop the Steal rally. And of course, taking photos when you're having coffee with friends. That's another way to do street photography. I'm not going to read these, but these were judges in some black and white photography competition. And I liked what they said about black and white, particularly the Aya Musa, about the nuances and details that you often lose in color, and the focus on the interplay of light and shadow, which I really appreciate with black and white photos. Okay, in 2014, I like to work on projects. And in 2014, I started photographing carnivals, and it actually started with an amusement park. And the project was initially to capture the creepier side of carnivals and amusement parks, but it kind of morphed into also including concession stands and rides and game stands. And the fact that I did it all at night, that creepiness is still there, I think. So I did a little video to show you some of the photos from my carnival project. This is something I've been working on for 10 years. Okay. All right, types of street photography. I like black and white and I like candid shots, but there's a lot of great street photography out there in color. And not every photo lends itself to being converted to black and white, like these two from Jazz Walk that I did last summer, and the woman on the left from the St. Patty's Parade. Street portraits, that's actually how I started doing street photography. The fellow on the left was a reenactor, and the one on the right was from the Gettysburg Ferry Festival. And the gentleman in the middle was very sweet. He took off his glasses to be photographed. Street portraits, of course, are when you engage with the person and you ask to take their picture. Environmental portraits, I just love this woman and her colorful clothes and colorful laundry. And the fellow on the right is one of the Moravian tile makers at work. Street vendors, the one on the left is from New York. The only time I really see street vendors around here is when there's some sort of celebration like Arts Fest or Capone or one of those things. Reflections can be of mirrors, puddles, glass, or even a box on somebody's head. I took that photo because I was fascinated of the reflection of the woman behind her. And I have no idea what that celebration was. It was at the Art Association. Juxtapositions, the three faces are what really make this photo. When I did this presentation at the Delaplane, I hadn't included street fashion because a fellow commented that he does street fashion. And I thought, well, you have to go to New York for that, but actually you don't. The one on the left was at Culture Fest, and the one right was just recently at on the way to the Hummelstown Fair. Silhouettes, patterns, and shapes. This is a good way to make use of very harsh light and high contrast. When you're out in the street, you can't always control what light you have. If there's a parade midday, you're going to get a lot of harsh shadows, but you can work with it and get some interesting results. Sometimes when you're out in the street and there's a lot of activity and you want to capture the energy, but there's no real focal point, well, there doesn't have to be. Alex Webb does a lot of these photographs, and there's 6 people in that photo and they're all looking in different directions and doing different things. So what do you focus on? You just focus on the energy and the chaos in the photo. Word about cell phones. A lot of people complain that it's no longer easy to get photos of people interacting with each other because everybody's on their cell phones. But it is possible to get really great photos of people interacting with each other on their phones, like this sweet couple that photo that Joe took. This is one of my all-time favorite photos, by the way. This photo sort of crosses over into documentary, but Karen Kaiser took this at in South Africa, Cape Town, at an abattoir, I think it's called, which you would think was the last place you'd find somebody on the phone, but there she is. And it's interesting. It's kind of a juxtaposition, almost like different time periods when you see her on the phone and then everything in the background. Gabe Spangler, I don't know if you all know him. He's a local photographer, and he does a lot of photography of really high contrast images, like this one where there's a shaft of light that catches the statue in the niche, and then he just caught a person walking by with a ponytail. Cheryl Heberly took this photo because it made a social statement. The homeless woman there in this bus shelter, and then that fair housing photo right next to it or across from her. So it is possible to photograph the homeless in a compassionate way and have a statement, have it be a statement, a social statement. I included this, the rules of street photography, because I was doing a casual search of street photography on the internet, and this came up. And I looked at it and I thought, what, really? I'm not going to cover everything here, but there's one that says never shoot on program or auto mode. A lot of people, yeah, or some people shoot aperture priority or shutter priority or auto ISO. I do autofocus because I can't focus as fast as the camera does. My feeling is, do whatever's comfortable for you when you're out in the street. It's terrible to miss a shot if you're fiddling with your dials, just trying to get everything right. So if you're comfortable in program auto mode, just do it. Now the first one, when in doubt, ditch. I'm showing this photo because I almost ditched it probably a dozen times. And one day I was playing around in Lightroom and I converted it to black and white. And I thought, this is really weird. It reminded me of that scene in Something Wicked This Way Comes, where the kid's on a merry-go-round. He goes in one direction, gets older, and goes another, gets younger. And I thought this has a really creepy, surreal quality. This became the basis for my carnival project that I started in 2014. And had I ditched this, I might never have done the carnival project. So if you have a photo that you're not sure of, hang on to it until you're really sure. Also about cropping. This is kind of interesting to me because Cartier-Bresson was really adamant about not cropping. However, the photo on the left is the out-of-camera version of the decisive moment, which I'm sure we've all seen. But he took the photo through the slats in a fence, and the opening wasn't wide enough for him to get his lens through, the lens of his camera. So on the left, you see part of the fence in the photo along with his crop marks. And he also cropped some off the bottom. So if you have to crop. You're out in the street, you can't always control what comes into your frame. And if you need to remove it, just do it. Just some basic rules of street photography. The last one, yeah.
Can you go over that one in a little bit more detail?
What are these rules?
Yeah, on the screen, just maybe elaborate on some of those.
Yeah, street photography should be candid, unless you're doing a street portrait, in which case you would talk to the person, ask if you could take the photo. Capturing candid moments, you don't really talk to the person beforehand. You just take the photo and move on. I've heard people say that street photography can be just a street. I have kind of mixed feelings about that. I think it has to include people or evidence that people have been there. That's just my feeling. Also, it should be interesting, and I see a lot of photos coming across Facebook that people have taken and they put on street photography sites. That's just a long view of a street, maybe a great photo. And there's a person walking away in the distance with their back to the camera. And you can't really see them. They're like far away. And when I see photos like that, I think, how is that supposed to affect me? What should I feel about that photo? Does it add anything to my experience? And usually the answer is no. And street photography should be created using a camera or cell phone, no AI or no composites. That's basically what the going philosophy is with street photography. Is that enough? Does that explain it?
Yeah.
Okay. Some of the techniques I learned at the workshop in New York. Well, the one I used, and I did use before the workshop, that's most natural for me, is walking. I try to anticipate something happening. I take the photo and I keep moving. I have mixed feelings too about using burst with street photography. I tend to take photos that are more up close and personal. I use a small zoom lens. I guess if you're using a longer zoom and you're farther away and you can burst without people noticing, it's okay. But for me to use burst when I'm doing street photography, I feel like I run the risk of interrupting the moment I'm trying to capture. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to interfere with what people are doing out on the street. Does that make sense? I guess.
Can
Yeah.
Can I ask
Yeah.
a question? Could you
Sure.
tell us, like, what lens would you use for these, like 35 millimeter or like a 180?
Yeah, 35 millimeter is, or at least was, pretty common among street photographers. My go-to lens is an 18 to 55.
Okay.
Now, when I was in New York at the workshop, I had my little Fuji, which was a fixed lens, 28 millimeter, my X100S. And I don't use that so much anymore. I kind of like having the zoom so I can get a little closer without getting closer. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
one of the instructors had us pinned to street corners and photographing people as they walked across the street. I didn't feel it. I mean, if you want to try that, that's fine. But I didn't feel it worked for me because one of two things usually happen. People would laugh like these ladies, or they give me the evil eyes. So I just continue to use the walking technique. Also, you can shoot from the hip or the stomach. I mean, most cameras, I guess, anymore have flip screens, and you can shoot while you're looking down, so you don't really alert people that you're photographing them. I have trouble doing that because I tend to get camera shake. So I like it much better when the camera's up to my face. It kind of holds it steady. Okay, a quote from Gary Winogrand. In fact, one of the instructors at the course I attended was really big on seeing us. And he literally would stand behind us and take us by the shoulders and point us at something and say, you know, look at that, you know, look at that. And so that we wouldn't miss opportunities to take photos. Okay. All right, before you go out on the street, I'm a firm believer in studying the work of other photographers, not to emulate them, but to learn from them. And then you can decide what interests you. I mean, there are a lot of, like I said, a lot of different types of street photography. So studying the work of others too can help you determine what you would like to do. And safety is really important. Research where you're going. Is it safe? Also, if you're going to another country, make sure you understand what the protocols are for photographing people in public. In some countries, that's acceptable. In other countries, it's kind of frowned upon. So know that before you go. I try to be inconspicuous. I have my autofocus light off and my shutter on silent. And I read that Walker Evans, when he was doing street photography, used to shoot through a buttonhole in his coat, and he had a remote trigger down his sleeve, which is really going to extremes. But there's all kinds of ways you can try to be inconspicuous. Vivian Maier, of course, had a Rolleiflex, and you know, you look down in the Rolleiflex at the screen, so it's not always obvious that you're taking a photograph of someone else. Just dress like a tourist. That's all that is. When I go out to do street photography, I basically take my one camera body and my one lens. You might want to take an extra camera body, maybe a prime lens. But I guess I want to say, don't get bogged down with taking a bag full of equipment. It can also be dangerous in a way, you know, depending on where you are. So just keep it light. That's my philosophy. Also, I like to set my camera for, the environment, for the conditions, the light conditions. And then I don't fool with it. I don't fidget with it. I know in New York, you can go from one block to the next and it can be in full sunlight or total shade. So you have to make adjustments as you're walking. But if you have to stand there and fiddle with dials, you kind of miss the moments. Also, being respectful. The purpose of street photography isn't to take photos to make fun of people, like, the Walmart stuff that you see going across the internet. Also, I feel like you should know why you're taking a photograph before you press the shutter. That way, if someone notices you and questions you, you have a reason that you can give them why you took the photograph. And I try to make it really positive. Like, I was in New York on Halloween one time, and I took a shot of these two women. They looked to be in about their 50s, and they had their faces all made up. And the one woman caught me and turned around and kind of glared. And I said, "Oh, I just like the way your faces are made up." And then they both posed for me. So my feeling is you get a lot less negative response from somebody if you approach it with kind of happiness and positivity. And the best light for street photography is the light you have, especially if you're converting to black and white. The morning or blue period, golden hour or blue period doesn't really matter so much. But a lot of times too, when you're out for an event, it's going to be midday or afternoon, and you're going to get shadows and highlights, strong shadows and strong highlights. So just work with what you have. And also, you don't have to travel. You can do street photography at home, and don't be deterred by the weather either. You can get some really cool photos in the rain, the fog, the snow. Just be careful, especially if you're out in the snow. And I think more than anything, just have fun. When I go out to photograph, I feel like it's a joy. I just feel lighthearted, and it's just so easy to get in the zone. And so I mean, presumably if you're out in the street, you like people and you like to photograph people and just have fun doing it. So
Karen,
Karen, could I interrupt?
oh, go ahead,
yes,
Ben.
well, I've come to the end actually.
But I'm curious about item number 1 there.
If you meet the masters, kill the masters. Yes. I think you need that. The masters I'm talking about that's a Buddhist thingy, but the masters I'm talking about, the masters of photography, study them, but then like get rid of them. You don't need to emulate them. You want to study them to learn from them, and then just do away with that. Then you go on to what interests you. I don't know if I'm making that clear.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does it? Okay.
Karen, let me ask you,
Mhm.
when you're photographing, like in New York City or wherever, and you love black and white, do you have your camera set that you're looking through the viewfinder, it's black and white, or if you look at the LCD, it's black and white? Do you do that, or do you shoot in color?
No, I shoot in color. Because I guess because I've been doing this so long, when I look at a scene or take a picture, I know how I want the black and white to look. And I'm more of a high contrast person too when I process, not to the extreme that say Gabe is, but I tried it once and the camera just didn't tell me what I wanted the photo to look like. I mean, if you're just starting to do black and white, I'm sure it can be helpful, but I haven't found that it helped me.
Okay. Okay. Now, like on the image I see on the screen right there,
Mhm.
let's say that was a 35mm lens. Okay, we'll just say that. Would you be using like any automated modes? Like, would you use aperture priority, shutter priority, or auto ISO? Or what would you do on that as your go-to kind of a setting for that?
I shoot completely manually.
Okay.
I use autofocus, but yeah, I don't use the various programmable things like shutter priority or aperture priority.
So when
You know,
you
when
go ahead.
I was going to say, when you use them, then you have to worry about compensation, you know, and how many points you take it up or down or whatever. And I just found it simpler for me to just shoot manually. And then I don't have to concern myself with that.
And if you were shooting this manually, what would be the setting that you would change most often? Would it be the ISO or something else?
Um, with street photography, it would be the focal length.
In
That's
terms
what I would change most often.
Okay, but like
Well, actually, yeah, the ISO I would change too. Like with the carnival photos, I would usually start, like as the sun was going down, I'd start with maybe an 800. And then I'd take it up to 16. And depending on how much light was available at the carnival, you know, I'd go up to 3200. I rarely went higher than that. I just found it, even with my Fuji, to be a little bit too grainy. But yeah, so I would change the ISO.
okay. And like on this particular image, just as an example, were those folks, that man, was he totally aware of you, or was he truly looking off and didn't really care about you whatsoever?
Yeah, he didn't see me. I mean, I took the photo and just kept moving. I came up, I think, out of a subway station, if I remember correctly. And I was trying to stay out of the rain too, because I don't think I had an umbrella. So I took the photo and like tried to get somewhere where there was cover, just for me, my personal, not getting wet.
Has anybody ever got really mad at you and yelled at you and
Only once, and I happened to be in New York. Was walking along 6th Avenue, and I don't know how it is now, but you used to see in New York people with hot merchandise or fake stuff that they're trying to sell on the street. And there was a guy and a girl sitting facing each other on like metal folding chairs along the street. And between them was an open suitcase. And I was just walking north on 6th Avenue, and I took the shot, and they started screaming at me. I think because that he was selling like hot merchandise that you know, I think that's why it concerned them. But I kept walking because I figured they weren't going to follow me. I didn't apologize. I just kept going.
What do you do if there's children? Will you photograph children?
Well, if I photograph one child, I ask permission, but I'm photographing the street and there happen to be kids in the area, then no, I don't ask permission. Like at the parade, there are always kids around, and you know, everybody's taking photos anyway, you know, with their cell phone and stuff. And it's not like I'm going to post it to Facebook necessarily with their kids in it. But yeah, I guess it just sort of depends on whether you're doing a child or maybe a mother and child, or if you're just doing the street, you know, the activity on the street, and there happen to be kids there.
On a number of the photographs you showed previously, you had people and they were smiling, and obviously you were taking a picture of them. Would you have actually asked them for permission, or would you have held your camera up and just point to it? And did they know that you wanted to take their picture and they just let you, or did you have to generally interact with them?
Well, if I'm doing street portraits, I always ask first. Are you talking about the one where I was attached to a street corner and people were crossing the street? Is that?
Or, I don't know, just in general, I mean, like, I was trying to get at, do you actually ask permission verbally, or do you do it just non-verbally by showing them your camera and you know, and then taking a picture?
Well, if I'm doing the street portraits, then I usually ask
Okay,
verbally, and I talk to the person. But
okay,
if I'm just doing the candid stuff, then no, I don't ask.
okay.
And like I said, I use a walking technique. So this is another thing, anticipating that something is going to happen. You kind of have to be able to pre-visualize as things unfold, and then be able to take the photo at just the right time, because timing is everything with street photography. But I can just bring the camera up, take the picture, and then keep going. If really interesting thing to watch, there's a video that you can rent, I think for $4 on Amazon. It's Gary Winogrand, All Things Are Photographable. And you see him out on the street and how he's doing street photography. Winogrand tended to be a little bit full of himself, but he's always descriptive about what he's doing in this video. It's really fascinating to me about how he worked with getting his shots.
Could you send us a link so we could put that into the email tomorrow? Because I think
Sure,
I would
sure.
like to see that. And that could be a good help for us as we get prepared for going down to the farmer's market and photographing.
Yeah, that's a fun video to watch. I've seen it about 4 times, I guess.
Okay. So you're familiar with the West Shore Farmers Market or any of those kind of farmers markets?
Well, yeah, I've been there. I wouldn't say I'm familiar. It's been a long time since I've been over there.
Is there any kind of tips and tricks you might suggest to us as we're photographing in there?
Well, it's probably going to be crowded, and I'm going to say that my technique of just using the technique of walking and taking the photo and keeping moving is probably going to be really difficult. I think you're going to be and I'm just guessing here, but probably in a position to have to ask people or let them know you're taking the photo.
Okay. Jim, you asked the question. Do you want to ask Karen your question?
Sure. Karen, I noticed most of your photos are taken what I assume would be level to your eye. Is that intentional? And what are your thoughts of bringing the camera down and angling it up for your composition?
Oh, I think that would be great if you can hold on to the camera and not have camera shake. Yeah, in fact, there were a couple of photos. There's one at least that I included here that I was actually sitting down. I guess I took a break and sat down on the steps in New York and was photographing people up as they walked by. And also there's a fellow on Facebook named Larry Abella who is in a wheelchair. And I don't want to, I don't know how to say this. The photos he takes, because he's in a wheelchair, are at a slightly different angle than those that you see people take with the camera up to their eye. And it's interesting to get that different perspective.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
noticed you had a couple of angled up ones, but the majority seem to be level. So I was just curious what your thoughts were.
yeah, it's just because that's the way I photograph. I bring it up to my face.
Okay.
Yeah, if your camera has a flip screen and you can photograph from your waist and angle up, yeah, you can get some interesting results like that. And that's the whole thing with street photography. You can do it 100 different ways, and you can get some interesting results and be creative. And the sky's the limit.
Yep. Gotcha.
So, Karen, I'm taking it from like if you're going to do street photography, like at a fair or a farm market or something like that, you're going to set an exposure. You're going to set a shutter speed, an f-stop, and a general ISO, and you're going to leave it set on that for most of what you do. If you go into a real dark area, then you might bump up the ISO, or if
Yes.
you might
Yes.
knock it down. But basically, you don't really change many of those settings, do you?
No, when I'm doing the fairs at night, usually the lighting's pretty good. And I like I said, I'll go up to like 1600, maybe 3200 ISO. But I do change the shutter speed. I always set my ISO for night photography so I can get the fastest possible shutter speed to stop action. But you know, sometimes having the blur is good. It's it's a creative way to take the photo. So it depends on what you like. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Yeah, I don't usually change it a lot.
Mhm. Okay. Does anybody else have questions for Karen?
Yeah, Joe, I have one. Karen, over the years, many members have told me they're uncomfortable approaching someone to ask to take a picture. When you do your street photography, can you tell us how you manage that? How do you go about breaking the ice? What do you say to people? Yeah, what's your technique?
Well, first of all, I try to smile, which is kind of funny for me because my resting face is really not a smiling face. But I try to just be lighthearted, and somebody commented one time that I'm I can't think of the word. And well, it's gone, whatever that word was. But yeah, just be positive. I mean, presumably, if you're out there with people and you want to photograph people, you like them. And it just takes practice, I guess, to just go up to somebody and, think about what's the worst thing that can happen. They'll say no. And you move on and you ask somebody else. So I've never had anyone say no. I did have a couple, I guess it was a St. Patrick's Day parade. There was this, they appeared to be a married couple, and they were walking along holding hands, and they looked really happy. And I said, "Can I take your photo?" And the woman said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, you look really happy and you're holding hands." And I said, "I just think that's great." And they stood there and posed for me. I mean, if you're going to, it's like what I said before, know why you're taking a photo before you press the shutter. If you see somebody whose photo you want to take, know why you want to take it. And then tell them, "Oh, you have an interesting face. Do you mind if I take your photograph?" Or, "What a cool outfit. May I take your photograph?" And I think most people are accommodating.
Very good. Does that include tattoos and big bushy beards?
Yes. Yeah, in fact, I have asked people on several occasions, "May I photograph your tattoos?"
Mhm.
So Karen, how many folks ask you for a copy of the picture?
One.
Really, just one person did?
Yes, and I have business cards ready. I've handed them out. And I've only ever had one person ask me for the photo. This is like in 10 years.
Yeah, isn't
And
that
I don't know
interesting?
why. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I photographed, at Shippensburg Fair and some other places, and I was handing cards out thinking, hey, these people are doing interesting things, they'll certainly want copies of the pictures. And like no one
No.
emailed me to ask for a copy of the picture.
Yeah.
I was shocked.
Yeah. I've been surprised too. I mean, it's like, you're offering to send them a photo that, probably going to be good, but no takers.
Hmm.
I don't know if anybody's interested. Like I mentioned, when I was in DC at the Gary Winogrand exhibit, I had a Nikon D7000, I guess it was. And then in 2014, I bought the small Fuji X100S. And then I guess in 2016 is when I bought the XT1, which that was my go-to camera for about, 6 years until the autofocus just stopped working. And I had it fixed once, and then the second time I just gave up and got an XT3.
Okay.
Have
Any
you
other-
done any with your phone camera?
No, I'm not good at working with the phone. I just do stuff that I want to
Hmm.
keep for myself. I've not been, I mean, I see you posting great photos that you've taken with your phone,
Well,
but
thanks.
I've not been able to master that.
I have found, in my travels that when I bring my big camera and I point it to somebody, they recoil, but with everybody using phone cameras these days, you lift your phone up and they don't winch at all.
Yeah, that's why I said travel light, because if you're carrying the big guns, it sort of makes you look like a professional photographer, first of all, and then
Yeah.
it's kind of like sniping somebody, and it's just you get a negative reaction. Plus, I think if you're traveling and you have a lot of stuff that you're carrying around, you run the risk of it or getting it stolen.
Yeah. Now, do you shoot RAW or JPEG, and how much post-processing do you do?
I always shoot RAW, and I process in Lightroom, and that's where I convert to black and white. I process the color image first, so I always have an image that I'm happy with in color, and then I convert it to black and white and make adjustments.
Okay.
Sometimes, well, not so much with my street photography, but when I'm photographing architecture, or when I did the Harrisburg at Night project, I also took the photos into Nik software, Color Effects Pro,
Mhm.
and modified them again there. But I don't do that so much with street photography or people photography, because I think sometimes, depending on what presets you use, people can look kind of funky.
Let me
I've had
follow up with
weird
well,
things happen. It just or people, and I see this too on Facebook. People will have like up close photos of people's faces, and it's like they're over processed and the faces almost seem dirty. And I've had that happen with some things I've done too. It just it adds an element of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like the subject was rolling in dirt.
yeah, too contrasty, too gritty.
Gritty, yeah, that's the word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you convert to black and white in Lightroom Classic, now just in a nutshell, do you use the individual color sliders to get the balance and the contrast that you want?
Yes. And that's why I don't photograph in black and white, because when I'm done using those color sliders, they're not going to look like what I see on the camera when it's photographing in black and white. I tend to be a little bit more contrasty, although not extreme, but
Karen, when
Yeah.
we go to the farmer's market, would you suggest that we have a camera in our hand and a lens and nothing else? Or do you think taking a satchel bag to hold something would be okay too? What would you recommend for that?
Well, I think maybe a small camera bag. I will probably go with just my camera and the one lens.
Okay.
But different people are comfortable doing different things and approaching it in different ways. And
Okay.
I feel like people should do what best suits them. Considering the market, though, is probably going to be crowded, a big bag of gear is probably going to get in the way.
Mhm.
Karen,
Any other questions for Karen?
yes, Karen. Have you ever taken a photograph of a child and wished you could have given that photograph to that person?
Oh, yeah. In fact, the one and only time somebody ask me for a photo, I asked a gentleman, he was with his daughter at one of the culture fests, and I said, "Oh, may I take your photograph?" And I gave him a business card, and then he did email me and ask for a copy of the photo.
That happened to me, but unfortunately at the time I didn't think ahead to give the person my email address. It was a little girl just got a paper parasol, and she was in Disney, and she was opening this thing. Oh, it was so cute. I still have it.
So did you give your card to like her mother or father or whatever? Or?
No, I didn't have cards back then. That was
Oh,
a long time ago.
Okay.
Well, that's a good point. Do you recommend that everyone have cards to hand out?
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to do.
Okay.
Although it's like, yeah, you may be making paying to have cards made, and then nobody will ask for anything. So yeah,
Well,
I
think
think
it
it's a good
does
idea.
lend a degree of credibility to you, though, that you are a photographer, you're serious, and you're pursuing something. You're not just on the whim.
Yeah, absolutely,
I
absolutely.
read an article from one New York City street photographer years ago who took a little photo book along, and they would talk with people about doing street portraits. And they
Yeah,
would bring out this photo book and let them look through it to show, well, this is the type of thing I like to do. And she thought that was very helpful.
yeah, that's cool. You just reminded me of something else. Now it's gone. Oh, being 77 really sucks. Oh, I know what it was. Yeah, some people, I guess, carry around those little printers
Oh, gosh.
Oh,
that you can print a photo right on the spot.
mm.
I've never wanted to get into that, but
I've been with folks that have done that, and I'll tell you, that's the worst thing you could possibly ever do.
is it why?
Do one, then another person wants it, and it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, I can see, I guess
And
you're
you
running.
can see there's not many of those on the market anymore. They kind of died off pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe.
Yes.
Joe, this is Don Uvick. And oh, by the way, Karen, I just love your carnival shots. I mean, I followed
thank
you
you.
when you were in Maryland doing that the exhibition, and they're unbelievable. They're fantastic. Even though it was a 10-year project, keep it going, because you got a fantastic eye for that stuff.
Well, thank you, Don. In fact,
Yep.
thank you for coming all the way down to the Delaplane to see the exhibit.
Oh, it was worth it. But Joe, one thing I've done, I've mentioned I do a lot of work for nonprofits, and I did a kite festival at the Camp Hill Kite Festival that they had a couple months ago. And what I ended up, somebody actually came up to me and said, "Hey, can you take our picture?" And what I end up doing, and I don't know, I assume this happens with other makers of cameras. Canon has a capability of me being able to send the photo from my camera wirelessly to my phone, and then I was able to send the picture immediately to the people that were there, and in a matter of a minute's time period. Now, that's just an idea that using those two mixes of technology, I'm sure there are apps out there like the Canon has that allows you to do things like on the spot, as opposed to trying to print it.
Fuji will do that too. I have not
Yeah.
done that, but it has a capability.
Right, but it gives you another option technologically from modern day type. Instead of just printing something or giving them a business card, you can actually on the spot share a photo with the person, which I've done on many occasions.
Okay.
Well, if you're shooting with an iPhone and they have an iPhone, you can airdrop it to them.
Ooh.
Yes, that's right.
Karen, I noticed you shot the polo match for MS Society. How much
Yeah.
fun? Yeah, I've done it for 3 years. How much did you enjoy that?
Oh, I loved it. And the one year, in fact, Don, I think you organized it, didn't you? Were you the person who organized it for like people from the club?
What was that for? I'm sorry, Karen.
The polo match.
No, that wasn't me specifically.
Oh, okay.
No, but I do remember it.
Yeah, but the second year I did it, well, the first year I just had to walk around the field and take photos. But the second year we got to sit up in I don't know what you call it, it's where the VIPs were, which was interesting. And, you know, we could eat, we had lunch and everything. But yeah, shooting that match was fun. The photo I took of the woman with the horse, and the horse looks like it's laughing, but I didn't give that to the polo people. I just took that for my own benefit. But yeah, that was fun. I had really enjoyed the.
It's a quick lesson on action photography.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. 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 That was, I guess, the only time I've ever done action photography. I just don't have opportunities to do that. But I did enjoy it. And, you know, and also I like to do other kinds of photography other than street. I love photographing architecture. I'm not great with landscapes. Occasionally I'll take a landscape shot, but I did go to a 9-day workshop in Death Valley, which was fun, and that kind of stretched my capabilities. But I don't travel much. So doing this at home or in this area has been a big plus for me.
Hey, Karen, this is Don Uva again. Have you ever done the Mermaid Festival in New York?
No, I've never ventured out to Coney Island, although if I'd ever do that, I would have to go with somebody. I don't trust myself to actually get there and back successfully on my own. I'm not familiar with the subway system in New York. When I go up there, I would just walk. I'd crisscross Manhattan and not use the subway. It was just strictly walking.
Okay, I may be doing that next year, so maybe we can talk about a trip up there. I'm not sure if I'd end up taking the train or a car, but you know, we'll talk later about it.
Okay, great. That would be great.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions for Karen?
Well, I hope this has helped or given some people some inspiration to do this.
Oh, Karen, it's been wonderful. Yeah, I thought you did a great job. Yeah, I loved your photos, and your stories were good, very informative, very nice.
Your stories about how you approach the people and how you capture the images is just phenomenal. This was a great presentation, Karen. I mean it. It was very, very nice, and this is a real good segue to us for doing the street photography over at the farmers market in the West Shore. So, but
yeah,
we
I'm gonna join
Yep.
that. I'm excited about doing that.
Great. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, we can stop the recording, and thank you very much, Karen.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks,
And-
Karen.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Karen. It was great.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Karen.
Thank you,
Thank
Karen.
you. Thank
A
you.
really nice.
Thanks, Karen.
presentation.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Okay, that wraps things up. Any other comments, Joe?
No, I'm just looking for the unrecord button. I don't see.
Okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
very good, guys. Thanks for attending this evening, and yeah, I'll get that email out probably tomorrow night as a follow-up to this meeting, and hope to see